This is David Moss with His Print Ministries, and we're just blessed again and excited about the opportunity that we have to broadcast this live webinar from 6,000 miles away all the way over to you. And we're fighting a storm here in Texas. We're always technology, you never know, with Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff, but we're excited to see you guys joining us. And we see the numbers coming up as we've come on, and just what a blessing that is. I would like to take just a brief moment to remind you guys, you will not be on camera during this webinar, but our panelists will be. And right now I have, I'm gonna tell Zach and Brandon, Zach Norman, many of you know Zach, who's been part of our His Print coaching staff, and of course, Brandon Hoybach, the turtle, who's been a big part of all of what we do over there with the football and with His Print. They're gonna be helping me spot the questions that you'll be asking and have the opportunity to ask. So when you have a question, as you listen to these coaches, feel free to click on the button down below that says Q&A. That'll allow you to voice a question. And when you do, I will, Zach and myself and Brandon will keep track of those, and then we'll be able to turn on your microphone, ask you to unmute your microphone, and then come on and ask the question. Let me introduce our coaches to you. First of all, Mike Norman, you know Coach Norman. Coach has been a part of His Print since the inception of football and part of our ministry, and just glad that he's here with us and the opportunity that we have. So we have Coach Mike. Now Mike, Zach, and Brandon and I would all be over there with you, and we're saddened that we're not, disappointed. But as we knew that we weren't going to be able to, we wanted to figure out ways in which we could share with you. Even though the miles were far, our hearts are close, and we want to be able to share that. Coach Quillian, Coach Chris Quillian was the head coach at Pasadena Memorial High School recently, and joining us, and was part of the relationship series. And so Coach, thanks for joining us, and you'll be able to hear his story a little bit. I got to know him a little bit as I've picked up several pieces of equipment from him over the years, and we've never really had a chance to sit and talk, but over the relationship series, I knew that this guy was a center and that he was at Mississippi State. So just a blessing, Coach. Thanks for being here with us. We have Coach Mike Allison. Coach Mike Allison is the head football coach at Dawson High School right here in Pearland. Mike and I have known each other several years. He was a coach at Pearland and then at Clearbrook, and we met when he was at Clearbrook, but I met him through the connection of Tony Heath, who I'll introduce here in a minute, and Mike, and is now the head coach at Dawson High School. Mike, thanks for being here with us. Appreciate it. And we got Coach Tony Heath. Coach Tony was my former next door neighbor. When we started to do the ministry of football, I had no idea how I was going to collect football equipment. And lo and behold, my wife slapped me in the face and said, "Hey, your former next door neighbor is the head football coach at Pearland. Why don't you go and ask?" And through that, we were able to start with collecting shoes and helmets and shoulder pads, and what has expanded now into so many other things that we're so blessed. So Coach Tony Heath, thank you for being here as well. Former head coach at Pearland High School. So that being said, guys, thank you, coaches, for being here, for being a part of this, for taking the time out of your busy schedule for us to pour into these coaches and players across the pond, as we like to call it. It's a big pond, but we don't get to fly there this year. So Zach and I are going to kind of scream off. Guys, I want to remind you attendees, that at the end, we're going to stay on. We're going to stay on as long as you have want to talk with Mike and Zach and me and Brandon. I'm going to release Coach Quillian and Coach Heath and Coach Allison to go after our hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, so that they can go get things done that they need to get done. But they're more willing to stay as well. But I want to keep those personal questions and stuff, the camaraderie, the virtual hugs and all that to a minimum until we finish here. But again, coaches, thank you so much for being here. Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, sir. And I want to add just a personal thank you to Coach Allison and Coach Quillian, and especially my longtime mentor and friend, Coach Heath, for always being there and always being a part of my coaching life and my football life. And each one of you guys means something special to me, and I appreciate you being here and sharing with us. I know I've asked all of you to come overseas with me at one point in time or another, and maybe that road might still be open someday, but hopefully we'll be able to return and get the camps going and the clinics and all the good things going there. I'm going to jump right in. I've got a question that I'm going to pose, and then y'all talk about the answers that you want to talk about, and then we'll kind of see how these guys jump in and ask their questions as we go through these. I'm going to go ahead and start out with David. Kind of had some questions for us. How do you deal, I know you guys are retired over there, Coach Quillian and Coach Heath, but you did deal with it for a long time. How do you deal with adversity once it happens within your football team? I know I get a lot of those questions when I'm over there. Guys ask me, how do we deal with adversity that comes up within the football team? Maybe it's guys that don't get along with each other or whatever it might be, questioning the coaches or anything like that. So I'm going to start off with that. How do you guys deal with adversity within your football team?
Mike, you could probably answer that first as a president because of all the adversity you're handling with the pandemic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess so, because we are dealing with some different things right now. Really, the first thing is, you have to have a good staff around you, and I've always felt like if I'm the smartest guy in the room, I need to find a different room to hang out in. Because the people around you, the assistant coaches, your coordinators, stuff like that, I really lean on those guys to help, make decisions and find the best solutions. The other part of that is, don't be afraid to fail at something. If we have an issue coming up like we've had to do with the pandemic thing, and trying to meet the guidelines that UIL and Pearland ISD have set for us, we've gone through a lot of different things, and I've talked to a lot of different head coaches to see what they're doing and trying to apply that to what we have. So those kind of things, to me, are the biggest help, is talking to other people, whether it's current head coaches, former head coaches, the staff that you have around you, coming up with the best ideas, and then not being afraid to take those on, and then once you do it, not being afraid to admit, hey, this isn't working real good, let's try a different way. That kind of, I guess, applies more to the COVID stuff that's going on. One of the other things that we have going on right now that we're dealing with is the relationship between different ethnicities, with the issues that the Black community have had, and that they're dealing with, and doing things to make their voices heard. We have to, we've had conversations in the coach's office about it, but we treat our players like young adults, the young adults that they are, and bringing up those issues and talking to them about the different things that are going on. And a lot of times the kids just want to be heard. Mike, when you first started the question, you were talking about adversity within the players, or them questioning the coaches, which we've all had to deal with at some point. But I think being able to have open and honest conversations with the kids about things other than football shows you how much you care about them, shows you how much you love them, and you're working towards their well-being. I think that helps when those situations do come up, whether it's an argument between players, or when a player doesn't see eye to eye with what the coach is asking him to do and stuff like that. I think as long as you, right from the start, are having those conversations where there's value on what the kids are saying or what the players are saying, I think it makes those situations a little bit easier to deal with when they come up.
I agree with you. I know, you deal with adversity and players not agreeing on everything. I always, and staff and players always try to create it as a family. Always try to take the message, hey, we're a family. And staff and, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers. And I know in my family, me and my sister, we fought all the time. there's a lot of things that we disagreed with, but the love was still there. And you try to create, and you always try to create love in our program. And I think it's that respect in the program, respect for each other. And like you said, Mike, you've got to be able, coaching's not a one-way street. You know, I tell you this way and you've got to do it this way. You've got to have feedback. You're on the sideline, you know, you've got a quarterback out there, he's playing the game and he sees things out there that you don't see. Well, you've got to bring him in, you've got to bring him into the conversation. You've got to bring your players into the conversations. Not that you're always going to agree, and with respect, but you've got to have, everybody's got to have open ears. It can't be a one-way street in your conversations. I think that's big, and I think I think you have to treat again your team and your staff. You've got other coaches. I mean, boy, you get in the coach's office on Sundays and working, and there's a lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas, a lot of headbutting going on, and a lot of arguing. Mike and Coach Norman.
we've had our moments.
Laser, Coach Norman. but we were.
I know you always wanted that conversation, though, Mike.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Respect for each other, where we could talk and we could disagree, but we knew that going out on the field that we can argue. It's kind of like, you know what, we can argue amongst ourselves, but by golly, you're not. We're going to take it to you. No way you could come in my house and argue with us, so to speak.
Right. Well, I've been kind of building on that. We always talk about we're all working for the same thing. We're trying to win, and so whatever we need to do to win, that's one of the main things. But we're all working towards the same goal, and so we got to be, we're in this thing together. And so we've had, differences of opinion on the staff, or you have kids that don't get along, and so on and so forth. So, but we're all working towards the same goal, and that's what I've always said about football. I mean, it's a great game. So when you get on a football field, it doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter where you came from or what color your skin is. We're all football players. We're all treated the same, and everybody's got the same opportunity. And that was what's great about football, as far as I'm concerned. But we've had, I've had a kid. This is kind of going along with what's happening now. It's, of course, it's a trickle down from the NFL. But I don't want to get on a big soapbox. But I've had a kid, 3 years ago, when all this Colin Kaepernick stuff started, he wanted to sit down at a volleyball game when the national anthem was playing. Okay, well, which is fine. He's welcome to do that. But what happened was some of his teammates were not happy about that. And so once you do something like that affects your team, and so I had to get him in my office, and he was a quarterback for us, and a leader and good kid, great kid. And so I just had to tell him, I understand what you're doing, and there's not a thing wrong with that, but what it does is affects other people on your team, because you got teammates saying, well, I'm not playing with that guy, and so now you got a whole different issue going on because you're trying to stand up for something you believe in, which I understand, but how does that affect the team? And so again, we're all working in the same direction. When you say adversity, adversity there's lots of adversity in a football program and team, and a friend of mine was saying the other day that I don't get upset about anything. Well, I don't get upset about the same things other people do, because as coaches, we've been through all that stuff before, and so these things that come up that people are worried about, we're not worried about those things, because we've worked through those problems before within our program. And so we don't worry about these little things that come up. And so we're a little bit more level-headed. When you're in a big football game, like Tony's coaching the state championship game, and he's trying to figure out what play he's going to call next. Well, that's pretty serious business. And so, we've been in those tough situations and those time-consuming, where you got 40 seconds to call a play and here we go. Well, most people out here in the public hasn't had to go through that. So because of that, we handle adversity a little bit differently, and hopefully we affect our kids in that way too. And that's one of the things you learn, as a football player, as an athlete, is how to handle adversity, because it's not going to always go your way, and you're not going to get your way. And now you're second team, and you thought you were a first teamer. And so, what are you going to do? And so, working through those situations, that's one of the things we teach our kids. So You know, so I mean that's just some of the things we can sit here and talk about adversity, you know, for 2 hours.
Right. We could talk about that for the whole webinar.
Yeah, your staff, talking about staff, that's a whole different guys conversation. So,
Right.
We've had staff issues before. We won't get into all that. So
Exactly. You know, I just listening to you guys talk, and I know I spent a lot of years with Coach Heath, and family is very important, building that family atmosphere, that culture, if you will. I know when I'm over there with those guys, usually, you know, the football part, they thrive in that, and they work as hard as they can. You know, some of them need to work on their techniques and fundamentals more than others. But one question I always get asked is about building that culture and building that family relationship. And I know that I've been through some things with you guys and what you do in your programs. Anybody want to talk about some things maybe you do to help build that family, that culture, that winning culture, and also that team first culture, if you will?
well, I mean, you know, what do coaches always talk about when you go to a clinic? I mean, there'll be 2 or 3 coaches that'll talk about buying in. Well, we can get them to buy in, then, you know, then we're gonna be fine. But we got to get kids to buy in. So how do you get kids to buy in? Well, you know, you love them and you care about them and you treat them with respect. You work them hard and you let them know that you care about them, and then that's how kids, you know, you get kids to buy into your program and get in the direction you want the team to go, or whatever it is. They may disagree with some things, but you know, but you got to get them to buy into your program. So I think just through, you always talk about this when you go into a classroom, you know, well, you don't automatically have respect when you walk into some classroom somewhere, you know. So over time, you know, those kids learn to respect, and they learn that you care about them, and that you know, you want the best for them, and you're trying to make them better. And so, I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, but you got to get them to buy into your program by you know, treating them right, and showing them that you love them and you care about them, and that you're going to be here, you know, when they're long gone, you're still going to be here. So
one of the things that we did, you know, and I've stolen ideas from every coach that I've ever worked with and worked for and everything else. But one of the things I think that really helped us, let me see here.
You're there.
Okay.
Yeah, you're still there.
My email popped up in front of me. One of the things that we did this past year was we had, we called it a team building.
oh, now you're frozen.
And we brought the kids in on a Sunday afternoon. And when they got here, they turned their cell phones in at the door. So they didn't have their cell phones the whole time that we were doing things together. We brought in a guest speaker to talk to them about, you know, overcoming adversity, and, you know, kind of told them his story. And then that took about an hour. And then from there, we broke up into position groups from freshmen all the way to seniors. And when they broke up in their groups, the first thing that they did was get to know each other. You know, each position coach led them in, you know, where are you coming from? What junior high did you go to? You know, why do you play football? Just trying to get to know the kids amongst themselves in their position group. And then it moved into, what do you want your position group to be known for? You know, whether it's come up with a name for your group, come up with a saying, or whatever it may be. And with that then led into, what do you want this program to be known for? And, you know, just, you know, and working with Tony, and ideas that I got from him about the big family thing, I'm really big on that as well. And I like I said earlier, I got it from other people and saw the importance of that. But when those kids got together and they decided they had a voice on the vision of the program, and then after they did that, we all came together, and each group was able to share what their vision for the program is, and that got them that buy-in that each of us talked about. You know, getting that buy-in comes a little easier when they feel like they've had a big part in creating what they're buying into. And, you know, I took the stuff that they gave us, wrote up the vision, typed it up. We made posters. We put it in the locker rooms. We put it in the weight room. I emailed it out to teachers and asked them to print it out and put it in their classroom. because it had something to do with every part of what we want them to be as football players. It was about practice. It was about the games. It was about the classroom. It was about doing things in the community. You know, all of those things were included in what these kids had given to me or to the coaching staff. And it was their words. So anytime they got off track on anything, we were able to come back and say, is that a part of the vision that you want this program to be known for? And let them know that, you know, this is your words that you're trying to live up to. So I think that helped with the buy-in, which we all know you have to have.
Yeah. Family, you know, family's a big word. Family, I think family, you take it and you break it down, you know, and that's kind of what we always did. Try to get with our players, you know, it's love, it's care, it's honesty, it's, you know, handling being honest, you know, with the good times and the bad times, and being able to handle situations. And I always try to, you know, my theory in coaching was you know, as a head coach, my job was to coach kids, and then oversee the whole, and then see it as an umbrella. And I always tried to make sure that our staff, that we as a staff were kid oriented, that we were family oriented. You know, I always tried not only that as our staff. I always loved staffs, you know, is they had their family, and I knew how important that was to make sure that they never denied their family. I tried to never let them deny their personal family. And, you know, if their kids were playing Little League games and things like that, I wanted them to be able to go to see their kids play, because that's a one-time thing. So I tried to create the culture within the staff as a family, as a family-oriented staff, and take that and carry that out to kids. And you know, each coach had their positions. And I thought it was very important that and a lot of times the position coaches had a better relationship with that kid than I did, because they were with him a lot more than I was. And I was okay with that. I mean, I felt that was very important. I felt like, you know, if that coach could try to develop those kids, those kids, you know, they would finally hopefully develop trust in that coach to where they could handle situations. And you take those hard situations, sometimes not necessarily football. A lot of times football is why we're here. Football brought us together. But there's a lot of things that are involved within the game of football. There's a lot of things involved with that kid other than just the X and O's and going to the field. It might be that his, you know, in his own internal family that they're having problems, that he has nobody to confide in. Well, as a family, as your football family, it gives him somebody to confide in. You know, whether we're talking about our teams, Little Leagues, a lot of you guys are adults with family members, and y'all play with guys that they have families. And it's understanding each other. You know, we create an umbrella for us, but we understand that there's other things going on outside that. And it's just with your family, you know, your father, you know, as a father in his job, he might have lost his job and he's dealing with situations, but he's still, and as kids, we need to support our father. Well, as our father, you know, we see our kids going through a bad time, a breakup with a boyfriend and girlfriend. We've got to be supportive of them. I think you carry that to your players, your coaches, your assistant coaches, and everybody. That's how you try to treat your players. And that's what, knowing that it's not just, and as we talk about, when you come in here, it's us, but knowing that there's other places for them to go and caring about those other situations.
Yeah, to go along with what Coach Allison said, I'm going to add something here. You know, the best thing that we did in our program, bar none, when Coach Nelson started here, when I came to work for him here, is we did team building. And so we do team building on that, you know, the second week of 2-a-days basically. And we got in the cafeteria in the evening, and we went all the way like 10 o'clock at night. So we started about 6 o'clock or 6:30. And so sometimes we'd have a speaker come in, sometimes we wouldn't. But we basically, after the main meeting, we'd break up, and I'd have all the kids divided into groups to different individual coaches. But it wouldn't necessarily be the coach that was their position coach, because I felt like our coaches needed to get to know everybody, because, you know, the offensive line guy, well, he knows all the offensive line people, but he doesn't have any dealings with anybody else per se on a personal level anyway. And so that helped us get to know. And we got in groups, and there was 3 questions that we asked them, you know, that got the conversation going. And so one of those questions was, tell us your life story. Well, you know, you just wouldn't believe. I mean, these coaches can attest to the fact that, you know, the things you think that you hear about that kids have to go through that you had no idea, you know. And so we found out so much about our kids, during that team building. So our coaches would get together, of course, afterwards or, the next day, and we talk about it, and we'd say, hey, did you know Johnny, was in a one-parent family, and his dad just passed away this past, summer, and so on. So, just things that you wouldn't find out. And so it just brought us together, and then we'd come back together at the end of the night, and then kids would be able to come up and say whatever they wanted to say, to the group. And so team building is definitely the best thing we did to start the season off.
Yeah, those are all great points. And I know I always talk to those guys over there about spending time with each other away from football too. That's important. I know at Pearland, our guys always had the Fat Tuesdays where they would go and eat together and fellowship together. And those times are important where you do get to know each other and know more about each other. And those are all great times. Hey, let's shift gears here for a second now. I know we're all dealing with COVID in our own ways, but just maybe without COVID or even with some of the things going on with COVID, what's the hardest part about coaching for you? Or what was the hardest part about coaching for you?
Hey, real quick, if anybody has any questions, make sure that you click in the Q&A and you can type your question, or you can click the raise hand button and me or David will message y'all. Sorry to interrupt. Just wanted to get that out there real fast.
Thank you, Zach. So going back to what our question there, what's the hardest part, Coach Allison, for you right now about coaching?
I think the most difficult part is right now it's kind of the organization and being able to meet the guidelines, because the athletes have to be 10 feet apart, and there's a percentage that you can have inside the building. There's a coach to player ratio, and trying to work out, we've had about between 165 to 180 kids coming through camps, and spacing those things out, trying to organize all that stuff has been difficult. Because the second I think I have it down, there's something else that I didn't think of. And, that kind of goes back to talking with other coaches and getting with the coaches on staff to try to make sure we're making the best decisions. To me, that's been the most difficult part, because we also have to keep in mind, like Tony and Chris were both saying, how these kids are coming from different situations. You don't really know what's going on at their home. At their house, they may have a grandparent that lives with them, where they're more concerned, their parent may be more concerned with letting them go to camp and be around a bunch of different kids with the fear of bringing the virus home or something like that. You also have coaches who have, we got a couple of coaches that have little children that are, 3 years old or younger, and there's obviously some concerns there as well. We have another coach that has a mother who is going through cancer treatment. So he, there's different things that you have to, I guess it brings to light a lot of different concerns that you have to have with the cleanliness, the social distancing, the health and safety of not only the kids and coaches while they're here, but you also have to consider what they're going to once they leave here. And, because I may not have the same concerns when I go home. I feel like, I pray that I would be okay if I get the virus. But at the same time, I don't have, like I said, I don't have somebody at my home, maybe an older grandparent or something like that may have to live with me that I have to be concerned about bringing that to them. So I think the organizational part of that and keeping the kids engaged, the kids are used to being able to push on each other and spot each other in the weight room and doing drills and things where they put their hands on each other or heck, one of the things that I have to continue to remind the kids as we're going through camp is, even if they're going through, let's say, going through the speed ladder drill, well, when they finish, they need to move over. So when the next kid comes through, he's not running, shoulder to shoulder with him when he's finishing his drill. There are a lot of little things like that the virus has made us have to be aware of. And it's been tough. I mean, we're making it, but it's been tough.
We'll switch it a little bit in kind of a football mode as far as the hardest thing about football itself. It's kind of, it was fun. It was a hard thing, but a fun thing is after football season, you start the new year. And you're bringing in the new kids and trying to create what you're going to create that football team as. We were a team. I always believed that you built your football team around your players instead of your players around your football program. I wasn't a wishbone type team that, by God, that's all we're going to run the wishbone and we're going to fit people into it. I always was, if we had speed and had a live cannon throwing the ball, how are we going to get this thing spread out and throwing the ball and doing things we do, or, and getting linemen and just trying to find that full niche to where we maximize the talent on the football field. That was always one of the hardest things for me to decide, because it was my mind. I'm a guy that my mind goes from here, bing, bing, bing. Coach Norman knows that. I throw it against the ball, I start looking at it. I want to do everything, but then you've got to zero me back in to figure out what we were good at on offense and defense. And there's also, when you bring these freshmen in, and I've got coaches fighting for players, hey, I want this kid. Hey, I want that kid. He's a great defensive lineman. Well, he's a heck of a tight end too. And making the decisions, because we had enough kids that we needed to split them up. That way, because one thing, you keep kids engaged. If you're playing, you're engaged. If you're sitting, you seem to lose interest a little bit. So finding out, what you are good at, what you're good at offensively, and then repping it and getting great at that. That was always a hard thing for me every year, just looking and kind of evaluating the talent and seeing how we were going to take this thing this year.
Well, I'd agree with both of you guys. Of course, I'm not dealing with the virus since I'm retired now, so I don't have to deal with that. I don't have to be 6 foot away from anybody right now. So, but I'm gonna just say two things to add to that. One of them is hiring good people. One of the hardest things, and of course, if you don't have a big turnover every year, which we didn't usually. I mean, it'd be different years. Some years you lose 3 coaches, next year you just lose 1. So, but hiring good coaches, I mean, that's tough. And then when you start losing coaches, and you spend half your time in the summertime, interviewing guys, and so man, it just takes up a lot of time if you're really trying to get the best guy that you can, or girl, as far as your women's program is concerned. So hiring good coaches is a tough job, and knowing who the right fit is for your program. And I mean, I had specific things that I'd look for when I was looking at a coach. And of course, if it's an assistant coach at the varsity level, of course, they have to have some knowledge about what I'm trying to hire them for. But I just tried to hire good people. That was the main thing. I want to hire good people. I want to hire people that are dependable, that want to work. A guy that don't want to work, we didn't get along very well, and so we had to part ways with a few people because they didn't want to work. But we're going to get out there and get dirty, and we're going to work. And I came from I don't know with these other 2 coaches. I know Tony came from a smaller school, but man, I started out in 3A football. So when you're a 3A coach, you don't have 5 maintenance guys that are cutting the grass for you, or people doing the laundry for you, and so on and so forth. Man, when I came to Pasadena, we had a laundry service. I went, man, this is fantastic over here. So, but you got to have, I wanted guys that were able to work. The second thing I would say is finding out what motivates kids, and being able to motivate kids. When I was a young coach and I wasn't real smart, I would say, well, I'm just going to coach them all the same. Well, that's good to say, and the bulk of what I do with coaching kids is the same, but what motivates one doesn't motivate another one. And how you talk to one, and I don't talk to them all the same, and I don't coach them all the same. Some kids you got to get onto them, and I can raise my voice and holler at them and get them motivated. Some kids don't respond to that, and so finding out what motivates a kid, that's an important. That's pretty important as a coach, because if your kid's not out there doing the job and doing what they're supposed to be doing, anytime we had a kid that quit the program or a kid that we couldn't get going, I was examining myself and trying to figure out what did I what could I have done differently? When a kid quits, a lot of guys will say, well, the guy just quit, we're going to move on. Well, that's true. You have to move on. But in my mind, I'm trying to, and this is what I did as I got older as a coach, I'm trying to figure out, what did I not do, to motivate that kid, to keep that kid in the program? Why was he not happy? Because when they come into your office to quit, they all say about the same thing, but there's some underlying thing that happens. Either, some coach said something to them, which is not good, and so, finding out what motivates kids and getting them going, because one of the worst things that can happen, and I tell kids this all the time, is you look back and you say, man, I wish I would have, what if you just would work a little bit harder, boy, there's no telling what you could have been. And we've seen, all of us have seen hundreds of kids like that, man, if he just would have been on fire like this other guy, there's no telling what he could have done. And so, trying to, figure out what motivates kids, I think that's another hard job.
Awesome. Hey guys, we have a couple of questions, and I want to get to Surgeon to ask him to unmute his microphone. He's from Serbia, and he has a question here for you guys. Surgeon, are you there?
Unmute your microphone there, Surgeon.
Okay. Is he there?
He's always got lots of questions every time I'm over there. I know he's got a good question. Got to get him to unmute.
All right. Well, Zach, you take on the next question. Surgeon, is that you? Nope. Okay, go ahead, Zach. We'll come back to Surgeon.
Okay, so our other question is from Mislav. Mislav is from Croatia, and I'm going to allow him to talk. All right, Mislav, you can unmute your mic now and ask your question.
Hey guys, am I good?
You're good.
Hey, greetings, y'all. Very honored to be here, guys.
Sir.
We're glad you're here.
So this just take a second. So I'm from Croatia, right? So I'm in love in the game of football. So I'm trying to, put it on a map, so to say, right? We all know that Balkans is not like the place where football is like, like European soccer or basketball or something like that. So my main question for y'all is how to motivate new players, new young kids in a game of football, and what would be like the first step to introduce them with football and keep the thing going right in Croatia. So that's about it for me for now. Thank you.
Let me start that out for you, because I know a little bit about Croatia and how things operate over there as far as schools go. And we're fortunate that we're able to get into schools and we're able to influence a lot of these kids when they are younger. And I know that Surgeon that was on there earlier, he's able to get into some of the schools in his town and his city, and he gets a lot of those kids interested in football at a very young age, playing flag football, coming and going through some small skills and drills camps where they get to throw the football around and just see how much fun the game can be. That would be a big thing if you were able to maybe get into some of the schools and do some presentations and try to, draw the interest of some of those younger kids, because I know you don't really have sports in your schools. Everything is club oriented, and you have to, play for a club team. And I know from coming over to Croatia all these years, you guys have struggled with, getting younger kids to join your clubs. And I'm going to stop talking. Maybe these guys have some good ideas of how to get young kids excited about football.
Thanks, Coach.
Well, I don't know if you have, anytime you can advertise the game through video, through, social media, and sharing it around, and just see the action of it. And I think that's, I kind of go back to when my first head coaching job at Pearland. I remember walking in the front door and there were two plaques, MVP and I think a Fighting Heart Award. Nobody really cared about football. They wouldn't even wear their letter jackets. And so we started, we made extra awards. We we went down to the junior highs and tried to build relationships with them. I think that's what Coach Norman's talking about. Finding the people, build relationships with them, let them know, number one, you as a person, and then second, introducing the game. And then when you are around the game, biggest thing is how you approach it. You've got to approach everything with enthusiasm. If you approach life, you've got to approach life with enthusiasm. Approaching this game, letting them see that, letting them see what the game of football is all about. Letting them know that, and like soccer and everything, they all teach valuable lessons, but there's so many lessons in the game of football that you can achieve.
Hey, I want to add, Chris, hang on. I want to add something here, guys. This is David Moss with his print. Guys, one of the things that's been elevated to me as I've been talking with these coaches and sharing with them and hearing their story is that we as his print, we want to help provide that. I think some of these coaches would be more than willing to talk, to put it on a video that you could go and show maybe a school, or you could go and show in a particular spot. And I think not only one of these 4 coaches, but many other coaches would be willing to do something. So we want to provide that service for you guys, that we would be able to talk a little bit about football and let them know that there are other people around the world that want to see them play the game. So.
Well, I would just say, one of his comments was, he loves football. Man, I love it. I love it. I think football's the greatest game ever been invented, so I'm biased. And with young kids, one of the things, when they're in junior high or when they have first experience with football, they need to have a good experience. If anytime you start anything and you don't have a good experience at it, you're not going to come back to it. And so, kids that are younger, they're migrating towards those things where they get positive reinforcement, they're having fun, and so on, and then it continues on. And so, I'm biased because I loved everything about the game. People thought I was crazy because I like practice, and guys will say, you like practicing football? Nobody likes that. Everybody loves the game, but I love the practice, even when I was playing in college, man, because I was with my teammates, I was playing with those guys, and we're in the huddle, we're looking at each other, and we're just having fun. Football's fun. And so, and I like everything about it. Now, when you get out there and it's 100 degrees in Texas, and you got equipment on, it's not that much fun, but you got to teach them that, you're working toward a goal, and the thing that you're doing, there's a result to it. There's an end result to it. And the reason that you're doing something, we tell our kids this all the time. Don't forget about the reason why you're doing it. The reason is because, of course, you want to win. You want to be successful. You want to score touchdowns or whatever your reason. Well, the reason, it's a good reason. Don't forget that. So when you're doing all this training you're doing, like we're doing now, or when we go through off season, we kind of lose sight of the game sometimes because you're lifting weights every day and you're running and you're doing these things and you're training, and there's no games until September. So don't lose sight of why you're doing it. And so, there's a reason why you do it. And football is a great game. And just like Tony says, we could spend hours and hours about what the game of football teaches you. And the game of football is why I'm the person I am today, and it's given me everything that I am, and personality and whatever you want to talk about, and my coaches that I had. And so, it's just a great game, but you got to start those kids off. They got to have a good experience when they're younger, and then they start migrating. They all migrate towards whatever they're having a positive influence, whatever they're getting a positive experience from. So, you need to start them out young and let them have a positive experience. So,
yeah, I think those are both. It's all really good. Some of the things that we do, Mike, you kind of alluded to it because I don't know what the situation is over there, but having the players visit the kids in the elementary school. Handing out T-shirts, letting them run through the sideline at the beginning of the game, just a group of young kids coming out there and feel the excitement of being on the field with these football players, and letting them come be ball boys and things like that, just to create some excitement. so that the young kids get to meet the players that are going to be out there playing the game. Makes it a little bit more personal, and then with the little league football teams and things like that, Coach Quillian hit it right on the head. It has to be a positive experience, because if it's not a positive experience, if they're just, I don't know, lining up 10 yards apart, running as fast as they can and running into each other without having any kind of instruction or positive feedback from the coaches and the people that are involved, well, yeah, it could get to a point where that's not very fun. So just making it positive, getting the excitement out there, making the fans, the younger fans, the younger kids, giving them a little piece of it by meeting the kids that are playing. I think all those things help build the excitement to where, yeah, someday I want to be that kid that's out. I want to be the guy that's out there playing. I want to be like Joe or Bill or whoever it is, because he came and visited me at school at one time and put his arm around me and told me I can do anything or whatever it may be. Making it a little more personal for him, I think, will also build some excitement.
Amen. All right, we're going to see if we can get Surgeon in here again. Surgeon, you there?
I see his name on the screen, but I see his microphone still muted.
Sherdon, can you click the microphone button at the bottom of your screen? You might have to, if you're on your iPad, you might have to tap on it and then click it. It says you're muted.
If he can't, we said we'd read it for him, but I'd love for you guys to hear from him.
Surgeon has a heart of gold. That man has a heart of gold. I hope he can get on here and ask his question. We've been to his camp the last 2 years down in Kraljevo, Serbia, and man, we've had 60 kids out there. A lot of them wearing Dawson gear, a lot of them wearing Pearland gear. It's fun to see. I got a lot of pictures of those guys in their Dawson gear and their Pearland gear.
Memorial shoulder pads.
Yep, lots of shoulder pads and helmets. It's amazing. And those kids, he does a great job down there. Those kids love football. They're excited about it every time we show up. I know that.
All right, I'm gonna read his question.
Go ahead.
So Sir John said, so in Kraljevo in Serbia, their Royal Crowns team has about 40 plus under 15 kids. They make a very few first steps in football in real life. Everybody wants to make some achievement. Every boy has a big ego, and it is a lot of me, myself, and I in the team. How to, using football and teamwork, close up the ego and have them give his glory and help them understand that he is greater than me.
Ooh, we could talk about that one for all afternoon too.
Coach Allison, why don't you go ahead and take that one? I can carry that one pretty good.
How do you deal with egos? How do you deal with egos and getting a team first attitude?
Well, heck, everybody's talked a little bit about some of this, and I remember Coach Quillian talking about, when you're young, you just want to coach them, and I'm going to coach them this way, and I'm going to hoot and holler and throw my hands up, and it doesn't matter, the kid's going to have to conform to me. And as I have grown, I figured out, just like Coach Quillian said, you have to kind of meet the kids where they are. Now, that part of that is trying to understand and help them, find ways to help them understand that they're not going to be able to do to be their best without their teammate being his best. And putting them in situations to where they have to depend on a teammate, whether it's a drill on the field, whether it's, some kind of community activity, whether it's something in a classroom, putting them in situations where they have to depend on others to be successful, and talking with those players. I've had multiple talks, as I'm sure all of us have, with young men about how to become leaders. The strong personalities that we've dealt with over the years, bringing them in, and they'll frustrate you at first, but then if me personally, I have to kind of step back and and kind of see where they're coming from and where their mindset is. And then talking to them, bringing them in a one-on-one situation and giving them leadership responsibilities, letting them, hey, you're really good at this, whatever this is, whatever this skill is, you're really good at this. What I want you to do is to work and try to help, in this drill or in the weight room or in the locker room, talking to this other kid, this other athlete, and try to help him become better. And I think kind of, some of them you can break down and some of them you have to kind of feed it and put it in a perspective where, yes, you are good. Yes, you should have confidence because you're good at running the ball or blocking or tackling or catching the ball or whatever, throwing the ball, whatever it may be. You're good at that, but you can be so much better if you help others become better at whatever that skill is. And I think when those players start realizing, hey, I have an influence on these other kids on the team, these other my teammates, and I can make them better as well. I think that can kind of, I don't know, slow the ego down a little bit in a lot of cases. But it's, again, it's trying to meet the kids where they are, understanding that all of them are different, and you have to find ways to bring them together. And of course, Coach Heath, through the boot camp stuff that we did at Pearland and it had carried on at multiple schools and all that kind of stuff where you're breaking kids down and they have to understand that they have to depend on their teammates to try to achieve the perfect day that they're looking for. It helps promote seeing the value of everybody on the team. And, we talk about that a lot. Everybody has value, whether you're a Friday night starter or a Thursday afternoon, 4:30 game backup. Everybody has value to the program. And, trying to help each player see the value of others, I think, helps with that.
I think both guys they hit the point. Basically, you have that kid with that ego, you got a prime candidate then. You need to take it upon yourself to make the mission for you to seek that guy to be one of your leaders. What's leadership? Leadership, a servant to a cause. And your cause is hopefully to be victorious, to be successful, your team to be successful. At the end of the day, that build that fellowship. And you as a coach or you as a leader, you as kind of over it, you've got to get that kid to understand his role. His role might be scoring, you can score every time, but understand you can't score without these other guys. You've got to have these other guys. Well, when we have more with us, we're a lot stronger. Yes, you might score, but if nobody else is enjoying the other, then we have the vision. And again, you've got to try to create that team and that bond and take that one prime candidate of that kid that's got the ego. And, to you, that should be your mission, to seek him out and to build time with him and figure out what gets him to tick and get him to be the servant for the cause, get him to be that leader, get him to be the one that, I need them. Amen. So I can be great. And he can still work, you can still, to me, I want a kid that wants to be great. I want a kid with that ego. I want a kid, I want a little bit of me in a kid, but you've got to make that kid understand that I can be great. I can be much greater if I have these other cats around me. Now, and it's your job to teach him, well, how do you do that? Where you build these kids up. When they screw up, you don't chew them out because you didn't score. You go, hey, man, you pick him up and you encourage him. Mike related back to we had the boot camp. And that was our whole vision of a boot camp was to break kids down. We were almost, as coaches, we're almost the opponent. And we would try to break them down, try to make them mess up, and try to get one to where he couldn't do it to where, and the others would have to pay the price for that kid. But instead of yelling at that kid to get right, we had kids going over there and helping that kid do his push-ups, helping him do his work. And I don't know, somewhere down the road, it just breaks. And it's not going to happen one day. It's not going to happen the second day. But you know what? If you continue investing in that kid that's knucklehead, I promise you, somewhere down the road, it's going to pay dividends.
Quit talking about me, Tony.
Well, it's a process, It's just like both of them mentioned, we did boot camp. We started about 6 years ago doing a boot camp. We'd heard about boot camps in different places. And so we looked at some different ones. And so, boot camp, like Tony says, the purpose is to break kids down and so that they learn they have to depend on each other. And when one of them messes up, the whole group messes up and everybody gets ticked off at you. And that's not a good feeling. So, you either get with the program or you're not in the program any longer, basically. It happens sometimes. But so boot camp was good for us. Everything we do in our program is geared towards teamwork. It's geared toward everybody relying on each other and teaching kids to do that. I went into one program, the second head coaching job I had, went in there and it wasn't a very disciplined place and kids hadn't been taught that. And so you had a bunch of good football players, but I got to them too late. And so they didn't have their ego hadn't been in check. And so they never developed to be the best they possibly could be because I got to them too late. When you take a kid who's a sophomore who's thinks he's the best thing since sliced bread and he's good and everybody's been telling him he's good forever, and you teach him the same things these other two guys are talking about, over time he becomes, not only a good football player, but he becomes a good leader. And I'm big on leadership. I mean, leadership's, we had leadership training we did every year in off season. And you have to teach kids how to be a leader. A lot of people saying there's different ideas about leadership. Well, so and so is a natural born leader. And I don't think leadership comes naturally to most people. And so kids, the first thing we would do in leadership training, we say, okay, give me an example of a leader. Well, they would say the normal things. They would say, Martin Luther King. They would say the principal of the high school. Those types of people. And then when you ask them, well, what do they do that make you think that they're a leader? Well, they can't give you those answers because they just know what it looks like, but they don't know exactly what it is. And so in off season, we were teaching them what it means to be a leader. And hopefully developing those guys that, like you already said, were good football players, but needed to bring those other guys along and be concerned about their teammates. So, everything we did, whether it was running wind sprints or boot camp or in off season, I mean, we were in groups of 3 in the weight room, and so I care about whether Johnny is getting 5 reps and he's supposed to be getting 6 reps. Because Johnny he's gonna throw a block for me. He's gonna score a touchdown for me. He's gonna make a game-saving tackle for me. And so I care about what he does in the weight room. I'm not just concerned about what I do. I know I'm gonna work hard. I know I'm gonna get all my reps. But if I'm letting him slack off, and then that's gonna hurt me later on. And so that's kind of the whole, it's just the whole concept of, the whole thing. Of course, these other two guys talking about the same thing. But it's a process and it's a program, and teaching those kids to think the right way.
And I'd like to add one thing to that too, as far as, and some of you guys over there listening may not have the opportunity to be around your team year round, but these are processes and these are things that take time and they're not going to happen overnight. We're fortunate that we have our kids throughout the school year and now we have them through the summer. So we're able to spend time with them and teach them the leadership things that all these coaches have talked about and teach them the team building things that all these coaches have talked about. So maybe if you guys over there listening too could build in some off-season type things in your programs where you have kids working together. You have kids, one thing we used to always do too was competition days where kids would go compete in off-season. And now you see the competitive nature of your teammate. You see the different things your teammate's good at that maybe you didn't think he was so good at. And, those kind of opportunities are going to build that culture and that family and that relationship and everything that we've been talking about, that leadership. Those are all good things that you guys could do.
Amen. Hey guys, we've got a question here from Eldar from Bosnia Herzegovina. So I'm going to ask him to unmute his microphone and he's got a great question here. Are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me, guys?
Hey, Eldar, how are you?
Not bad at all. Thank you guys for having us, even online, and thank you for helping us through the years. You're not even aware how much that means. I just had a question for maybe even a challenge. How would you and how it sorry, I don't finish. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
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 Sorry. How would you deal with a situation where you have a young guy who wants to play football, wants to join your team? You're in the middle of preparations or in the middle of the season. You want him in, but he has no clue of football. How would you, in the fastest way, equip someone with theoretical and practical knowledge to play and be part of the team? Because that's, I would say, one of the biggest challenges here. We are, unknown sports, and people here know baseball, no basketball, no soccer, no tennis, no rules, but they're not aware of football rules. They see it and they don't want to play. Now I had a kid that joined a week ago, and he has the energy, he has the ability, but he has no clue of football. And me, from the other side, I have all this knowledge, but how would I, clusterize that in sequences where, he'll be introduced to the rules and over time got to a position that where he's good at. That's about it.
Well, football's complicated. I don't know. I hate to say that. It's not. If you're going to look at the whole game of football and what it, everything about it, and instead of being, just a position-oriented talk, and then it's complicated and hard to understand. So I don't have a great answer for that question, but I don't know. I don't have a great answer for that.
I think what kind of what you started with there, if you're trying to explain the whole thing, I think that could be very overwhelming.
Yes.
Exactly.
Get with that guy, and hey, him, so you can try to figure out what position you think he would have the most success and be able to help the most with, and then start with that position. Start going over some basic rules and guidelines that position has to follow. And then I would think then kind of grow it from there. I don't know what all the players have access to as far as, when we have a new kid come in, we have a lot of things now on our huddle program, whether it's, we're teaching formations or defensive, the base sets, the different blitzes and stunts and coverages and stuff like that, especially with the COVID situation that we're in. We have a lot of instructional things on our huddle program that we can share with our players. So when they're at home, they can watch. Heck, we've had some of our coaches in their backyard with their kids, their personal kids, or their wife maybe filming them on their phone, going through some drills and things that our players could do at home, and they've posted that on Huddle. So the kids have access to logging in, looking at drills, looking at our base, formations, plays, whatever it may be. And I don't know if you could do the same thing there with rules. Before that, I know back early on, we would have stuff printed out in a little packet where we'd staple stuff together. And I know that each of us have done this where I know Norm's done it for sure. You got your receivers. Okay, you need to learn these routes on these plays, and you could hand them a little packet where they're learning those things. And I think you could do the same thing with the rules. And as you build stuff, you find out, okay, well, it's easier for them to understand rewording it this way or drawing a picture of it this way or whatever it may be. I think that may be the easiest way because you're limited on, I guess, the time that you're spending with this player. So he has to have something that he can take home and do some studying on his own.
I think it comes into what both of them are saying. We have a saying here, kind of really a football saying, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple, stupid. Try to keep it as basic as you can because both, as Coach Quillian and Coach Allison said, if you can overwhelm a kid in a game of football very fast and your head will spin and it'll lose this interest. You've got to break it down as simplify the game as much. 11 guys on one side, 11 guys on the other side. This side to try to keep this side from scoring. They have so many downs to do it. Keep it that simple. The simpler you can keep it, the more interest you're probably going to have from that kid.
Well, another thing is, when you start, and we do this at the beginning of the year, beginning of two-a-days, you always have classroom time. Then, of course, you got field, you got practice on the field. And so we always thought it was best, get them on the board. You're talking to them about what you're going to do that day or a drill or a play or, whatever it is you want them to do. And then they go out to the field and they actually do it. And so you got two different ways you're teaching them. And then some kids, when you draw it up on the board, they'll be oblivious to that. They're not, if you tell them, our kids, some of them, when they were seniors, if you said, hey, I need you to draw a play up, they wouldn't be able to do it. But when you get on the football field, they'd be able to. And so some kids are going to respond to that, to the drawing part and to be on the, get on the board and understand you. And then some of them will understand some of that. But then when you get to the field, they're a learner like I am. I need to see it. I need to go do it. And I'm better at on the field doing it than getting on the board and seeing you talk about it. So I want to see somebody do it. And so, Mike, I don't know if they have access to Huddle or those things, but man, when you see people do drills, and I know you talked about that earlier, putting some kind of drill tape together, but gosh, just like all of us, when we go to clinics, I want to see the tape. When we go watch these college guys practice, Tony, Mike, all of us have been to colleges in the spring and seen what they do, man. When I see them on the field, that's what I want to see. That's where I learn new drills or how to say something differently than I've been saying it and so on. So I think the board's important and I think the field's important, working those things together.
Go ahead, Marco.
I think too, I'm sorry, let me add one thing there, and it draws on what everybody's been saying about keeping it simple. I'm real big on, once you've seen it on the board, once you've seen it in a packet, maybe once you've seen it online, if you have a way to share information with them online, now you need to build in a time to go walk them through. And it might be something like Coach Allison alluded to earlier, easily is learning how to run a route or learning how to block, zone to the right, or knowing how to, use your hands to defeat an offensive lineman and get off and look for the football. And you walk through these things and you get that time to teach slowly. And then hopefully they pick up that skill, and then maybe you can eventually add a little bit more, so I think those are all good ideas.
Well, I think, another thing when you talk about teaching, I didn't realize this probably until I'd been coaching about 10 or so years, you're telling a kid, just an example, you're telling a kid heel line, you're telling him A gap, B gap, C gap, zone step. And so you keep saying that in practice all the time. And you don't figure out till about 5 weeks in that he doesn't have a clue about what you were saying, what you were talking about. You're going heel line. I'm thinking, and he doesn't even know what that is after about 5 weeks, And so you need to make sure that you're not talking Greek to them and they understand the terms that you're using, the football terms and what you're trying to tell them. So
I know that Marco from Croatia wanted to chime in on this. Marco, go ahead.
Okay, hi everybody. First of all, thank you for the webinar and for allowing us to ask questions. This will be more of a opinion than a question, but it can relate to a topic of this discussion. I think that Eldar's question is something that usually is the problem for every team, not only in the Balkans, but probably in Europe or any any country outside of the US trying to do football is because what happens, you have, if you have an off-season period, first of all, people don't know football. And anybody who comes in, there's no elementary knowledge. There's no basic knowledge of rules or anything that happens in the sports. When you have people joining in soccer teams or basketball teams or something, they have seen it on TV. They have some elementary knowledge of what is going on the field. And what you guys said is all very helpful and can be implemented. But the problem is that we have basically no way of spreading football in that way so that you can have somebody come in and be already acquainted to the game of football. Then it happens when you are preparing, let's say, mid-season for games, and then you have somebody to come in and join the team. It's very hard for you to say no, despite knowing that it'll be very hard for him to join the team and be welcomed, as you have somebody who's been here for 3 years and learning something about football, and now you have somebody jumping into the A team out of nowhere and trying to learn football in a very short period and possibly play the game, because he will not feel included, because a lot of teams don't have like a B team or like second string or third string, or juniors or something. And you are not in the position to say no to somebody. And then when you say yes, it's very hard to keep him on the team because he's surrounded by, let's say, experienced players. And it's very hard to catch up because he doesn't have a group of people around him that have the same thing, as there's no culture of football. And when you take new members, it's the same thing. You don't have the equipment, you don't have the field, you don't have the stuff that you can do. So to be short, it's very hard to do something like that when you have absolutely no preliminary knowledge to the sport of football, and then you just jump him in. As Coach Tony said, you can overload somebody with football in 2 minutes. You can give a massive information that he's gonna say this is not for me, and he's gonna leave the team. So
I can kind of relate to that. At the 3A level, the two 3A schools I was at, they were small 3A schools, and so the enrollment at 3A level is pretty broad. And so, we'd have 24 people on the varsity, and we'd have one sub-varsity team, and we'd play against some other 3A teams that had two sub-varsity teams. So they had a freshman team and a JV team, whereas we just had a JV team. And so we ended up having a bunch of freshmen playing with a bunch of JV guys. So you got ninth graders that could possibly be playing with juniors and sophomores who are a lot more experienced. And so they don't get a good experience because they're playing with guys that have already been at the high school level for 1 or 2 years. And so it's kind of a vicious cycle. There's nothing you can do about it because you got to have a sub-varsity team. But like you're saying, because of numbers, we didn't have enough people to have a JV, a varsity, and a freshman team, where you keep those freshmen, those incoming guys that don't know a whole lot yet, and keep them separately on a team. But I would say y'all have a tough job, because we have football all over the place. We got football on TV all the time. We're seeing reruns of football right now. And so, the influence of football can be seen all over the place. The last thing I would say is, it's easy to get a basketball out there and shoot baskets. It doesn't take one person to do that. So you got a basketball, get out there and shoot baskets. You don't need anybody else for that. Soccer is the same way, And so yes, you can go out there and do football drills by yourself, but it's a little different in that playing the game is it's a little more different types of skills involved in it. So you can't just pick up a ball and start playing it. So
Yeah, amen. And one of the things that I think has been very vital for those guys, and I'll speak to Eldar and to Marco, and I know Mike and Zach and Brandon would also reiterate what Eldar is talking about is, when the sport gets elevated is when they're playing. And there's a kid who walks by or comes and sees them play, and all of a sudden he's thinking, I want to play. And because they don't have the numbers, they want to involve this kid, as Marco said, they want to involve him now. And they want to, but yet he doesn't know a thing. And to keep him motivated, to keep him into the game, how do I best do that? That's extremely difficult, especially when you're talking about most of these guys don't have a field they can even practice on without having to pay to practice on it, and so they only have a few practices even during a week. So the availability is limited when it comes right down to it. So.
And
David,
a
I
good
think
idea.
back into, you got to give that person one responsibility, and you teach him one responsibility. And try to let him understand. You don't have to know the whole game. Just know how to do this. And if you do this, you're going to be able to help contribute to this team.
Yep.
You know, it might be a wide receiver teaching him. You know, we're going to bring you in, and you're only going to worry about these few plays, keeping it very simple, keep it very basic. Because again, it's going to go. And then maybe if you have 15 minutes after after the workout, stay over with it, and then try to and then each day. And if you can get him through day one and teach him one thing, okay, and then get him to day two and maybe teach him one more thing, and is in building blocks, build on the kid. Again, we keep saying that he loses his interest fast because he's overwhelmed. Your job as the coach or trying to get this kid in is to not overwhelm him. Put him in one position and let him only learn that one position. He doesn't have to learn the game. He gets to put on a helmet, gets to put on pads, and he gets to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And he's taking care of that one position, which will help the team.
Amen. Eldar?
Yeah.
Did that kind of help a little bit?
Well, to an extent. Of course, you can't know.
To add kind of onto what Coach Heath was saying, I think it'd be a really good idea to assign like a veteran player that plays maybe the same position you want to put that player in to kind of be a mentor, and maybe have them watch a YouTube video of a football game and kind of explain a little bit of the rules, explain like what position they play, and show them what it looks like on like the NFL level, and kind of explain to them and be there with them in practice to help them if they have any questions. That way they just have somebody to lean on and to help them get through and understand some stuff. That's all I wanted to add. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Good points.
Good. Zach, why don't you go ahead and take Mario's question?
All right, so our next question is Mario Pinic. We call him Penny. He's one of the first guys that I got to meet in Croatia. We stayed at his apartment the first year I went. So Mario, if you will, hold on, is he still in here?
There he is. He's on now.
Okay. He switched accounts. It said Mario Pinic, now it just says Mario. All right, Mario, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Good evening, guys, or good afternoon to you. Hi, Mike. Hi, Tony. It has been some time since we saw each other. My question here is more mental. What happens with the clubs in the Balkans? I mean, I will speak specifically for Croatia, is that you have different kind of mentalities that all love football. Now, the problem comes with egos, right? We lack leadership, and often we have collisions. The only thing that binds these people is the love for a game of football. But sometimes that's just not enough. So often guys are in we can call it a closed space where they don't want to work together anymore. So clubs have been dismantling this way, and that didn't help. So there was a bad practice for some time regarding this. And I need some like guidelines and tips, because I understand that when you have a lot of players, a lot of coaches, you have the luxury of changing staff and changing people, adjusting things to your culture. But here, the love for a game of football is the only thing that binds you, and everybody wants to play and everybody wants to lead their own way. So how to get these people to work together in a way? That would be, I mean, Mike knows this, but the problematic, it's a bit of a problematic thing for the Balkans in general. So I think aside all the other questions, how to get people more involved, I think the answer there is love. All of you guys mentioned it. And how to get new guys get going into learning rules is by just playing Madden, fantasy football, or just watching YouTube, meeting other guys. You know, those things are really simple in a way, I think. But these mental things, that how to set a goal in a long term, I think that's a question that needs to be answered in a way. I mean, his print is helping here a lot and showing the way. But still, I think there's some finesses, and I think you guys should be able to answer those.
I know that, you know, the saying that we have is too many chiefs and not enough Indians sometimes. And I know I've experienced it with you guys, especially with the Seawolves and Split. You know, just so many guys want to lead, and they try to lead, but they don't know how to lead. And so then it gets into what you're talking about with the butting of heads and people departing ways because they can't get along and they can't agree with each other. And I wish there was a simple answer to that, but there's really not. I mean, and all these guys will tell you here that because they've led very large programs, man, it is a daily, almost minute by minute process of teaching them these kind of things, teaching them leadership, teaching them how to not have an ego. And those are all difficult things. I don't know. You guys want to chime in on anything that Mario said?
Mario, I mean, my question to you, is there coaches and then players, or the players player coaches?
Coaches in general, leadership. I mean leadership of the clubs, organizations. That's basically this problem, like in the Seawolves, is common for all Croatian clubs, most of the clubs in the region. So
it's got to be.
What are they having a disagreement about?
It has to be ranked. You know, number one, you got to have a head coach. And your head coach, then therefore, he's got to name 2 top assistants, and then staff's going to have, everybody's going to be involved, but staff has to be ranked in order, kind of almost, you know, has to be ranked in order so they know their role and they know where they come from. And in that, sometimes that ego of that other guy is going to get up there, and then sometimes the head coach has got to pull that guy and say, hey, and this is a bad way to say it, but know your position. You know, we want input and everything. It's kind of like we get in the office and we try to develop a game plan for the week, and everybody throws it on the board and everybody has agreements, and then one coach is adamant about one thing, and another coach is totally against that. But at the end of the day, we've got to understand, you know, one person's going to make the decision, and whether I agree or not, I can agree to disagree. And I can walk out on the field, and when I get with the players, we're all going to be aligned as one. And you've got to have that staff that you've got to develop that staff. And to me, that you have to do that. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
What are they having disagreements about? Just general things about the game or the organization?
Mostly, I can tell you, and Penny can tell you too, mostly it's about how to run the team, how to run the practice.
Run the team. Okay.
Yeah, things like that.
Hey guys, before we go on any further, I know Coach Heath, you have to leave here because you got another event that you got going to. I just wanted to say thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for just pouring out both in your relationship series as well as here today. So thank you.
Thanks for involving me. I'd love to do, you know, let's set this up again. I'd love to do it again anytime. I'm sorry I have to cut out early. Got another event I've got to go to, but man, you know, you guys have got something going good over there. And again, there's never been anything successful that didn't take work. Always remember that. Success has never been something easy. And so you have a belief, you know, it's a big rock, chip it a little piece at a time, and I promise you, you're going to have something come out of it beautiful.
Hey, I got to tell you that Eldar from Bosnia and Herzegovina says that has anyone ever told Coach Tony he sounds like John Madden?
I'll take that as a compliment.
Oh yeah, that's a good compliment.
So it's going to be It's going to be Heath 2021, not Madden 2021. So
There you go. That sounds good. You guys have a good one. Again, thanks for allowing me to participate.
yeah.
Thank you, Coach Heath.
Later, bye.
Yeah, and again, I can try to add a little bit about what Tony there was just saying. Small steps, small successes along the way, hopefully will lead to some bigger successes, as you guys go through and try to work together. Again, it's okay to agree to disagree, like Coach Heath said, but at the end of the day, kind of have to know who's the head coach, who's in charge. Hopefully he's not abusing those powers, but he's learning how to cooperate and work together and involve everyone. And I don't know, anything else come to you guys' mind on that topic as we were talking?
I think it has to be just what y'all are saying. I mean, there has to be, discussions, arguments, if you want to say it that way, when you're in the coach's office. Discussions like men have. But then once you leave that office, you're unified in the direction that you want to go, whether it's how you want to handle that day's practice, or what you're trying to get accomplished in a game, or something as small as sharing an athlete on offense, defense, special teams, whatever it may be. There has to be that unified front once you leave that coach's office.
One thing I've learned over the years is, man, there's a lot of different ways to do it. I mean, there's 1,000 different ways to do it, and so the guy that's running it a certain way, he thinks it's great. He loves it. He wants to do it that way. It's worked for him. He's been successful at it, whatever you want to say about it. So, there's lots of ways to be successful in a game of football. And so there's not one defense, there's not one offense, there's not one strategy there, so there's lots of different ways to do it. And, but you all got to be on the same page about it for sure. And I don't know how how the coaching structure goes over there, but it's like Tony said, you gotta have a head coach, and you gotta have, some good assistant guys. You got to have maybe one assistant that is your advocate, so to speak. Another guy that's got some experience that keeps everything going and in line. But man, there's lots of different ways to do it, and but the head coach, has got to make the final decision on whatever it is. And so, just like I tell guys all the time, if you're working on a staff and you disagree with the head coach, and you feel like you can't work for that guy anymore, then you need to go on and get you another job. But that's kind of how we approach it here in Texas. But but you're not disloyal to him. You're not arguing. You're not, you're doing what he wants done until you can go on and get with somebody that you agree with. So, there's got to be a structure in there. And, there's got to be a boss. Somebody's got to be a boss.
Go ahead.
Easy job.
Go ahead, Marco. I think you wanted to comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in on Mario's question. I think leadership is something you're born with. And I think that's not the problem in the discussion that we're having in Croatia, probably in Bosnia. Coach Mike, I guess you know this. Most of the team coaches are presidents or players or something else in the team, and then you have various roles for several people, because we don't have a market of coaches or people that are experienced in football that can come in the team and take a certain position and do only that, besides the players. Mostly people who are very invested in the team are players, coaches, presidents, friends and everything at the same time. So to answer Coach Chris, very rarely, especially in Croatia, is there a structure of leading the team just by having one role. So you can have somebody have the position of the head coach, somebody have the position of the assistant coach, but somebody whoever he is, he's probably going to have multiple roles because the guys who come in are either not interested enough or not skillful enough to participate, and the sport is just not that long here. So you can have people who have been in the sport for 20 years, and then they can just come in and assume the coaching position. So what happens is you have somebody who's three things at the same time, and being, let's say, a head coach and a player at the same time, you make a mistake. How do you yell on yourself? How do you discipline yourself? How do you make the same level of authority on yourself and everybody else? I think that's the major problem, because it's very hard to give yourself, I don't know, 10 laps or 10 push-ups if you do something that you said other people shouldn't do. So I think that's the major issue regarding at least teams in Croatia. I know Serbia has a lot of teams with head coaches, but for us, for instance, the Dubrovnik Sharks and a couple of other teams in Croatia, that's the major problem. Then you have egos, then you have all of that, and you have all of that in one person doing 4 different positions and 4 different kinds of things related to football.
Right. And it's to me, it's a fine line that you walk between leading by example and being the leader and trying to decide how to run the team as you're also a player on the team. Yeah, those are all hard things. And, the biggest thing I could maybe say is you got to be willing to have a little bit of humility, and you got to lead by example, and you got to hold yourself accountable. If your team's holding you accountable, then, you got to be willing to, and I'm not speaking directly to you because I know you personally, and I know you do hold yourself accountable, but the teams that run into trouble are those, again, with the egos and guys that don't want to have that accountability.
And one of the main problems is just knowledge of the game then. You got guys that don't have a whole bunch of knowledge of the game itself.
In Croatia, there's some of that. There's guys that may not have that much experience, but they're trying to lead the team. They're the president of the club, but they're also the player on the team. That kind of thing. There's a lot of that happens in Croatia. Now Serbia is more organized they have coaches and that aren't players and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So we're answering some of their questions. Hopefully, again, you guys that are listening, I kind of look at it this way. I go to a clinic or I hear coaches speak. I may not agree with everything they say, or I may know a lot of what they say already, but I'm always looking for that one little nugget, that one little piece of thing that can help me be a better coach. Whether it's something to do with leadership, or whether it's something to do with a football strategy, or whether it's something to do with how to have a little more humility and a little less ego. Those are the things. Just if you could just pull one little nugget out of this webinar that helps you as a coach, as a player, as a person, that's always our goal as well.
Amen. You know what? I think that as we've been talking, coaches, it's a learning experience for them to hear you guys, but it's a learning experience for you also to hear from them, because it's a totally different ball game when it comes right down to it. And the fact that they don't have a field that's theirs. It's not a school event. It's all a club. These guys are coming out after most of them have worked all day. They practice 1 or 2 times a week, and then they try to play a game. They don't have a coach that they've hired. They've got to try to, again, like we said, there might be 2 or 3 that are doing 2 or 3 different things. Marco said, hey, it's hard to impose 10 laps on yourself if you've made a mistake. Maybe us coaches need to kind of take that into consideration, and say we made a mistake. We got to go run a lap or something.
Right.
That's what. Heck, I've dropped down and done push-ups. If I said a word that I shouldn't say out at practice.
I know Coach Allison done that before.
Yeah. The kids will hold me accountable, and I don't mind, but I think that's part of the relationship. That doing something like that, if I let a bad word slip or something like that, which I try to do, I'll drop down and do my push-ups just like we tell the kids to. But you're right, David, when you talk about how, we're trying to help them with some of the knowledge that we have, but in listening to some of these questions, I don't know that I have the right answer, just because I know that they're dealing with a lot different issues than what we have to deal with. as far as facilities and time and just general knowledge of the game and all of that. I'll tell you right now, there are a lot of days that I come to work that I feel like I don't know the answer, and I may spend 30 minutes when I first get to school reading the Bible and praying about what I need to do, because once you get into that leadership position, there's not a manual, there's not a book that tells you all the things that you'll have to deal with, and through, like I said, through the Bible, through prayer, through support from friends and my personal family and everything else, you got to find an answer. But yeah, I hold myself accountable for those things as well. But it's tough. Golly, I can't imagine all of the things that y'all have to deal with.
Yeah, that's for sure.
We have a lot. We got a lot of ways to look at football and learn things. And of course, with the internet, I mean, everybody's got access to everything now. But I was just trying to, especially when I was a young coach, man, I was trying to soak up as much knowledge as I possibly could. I'd go to a clinic, and you hear 10 speakers speak over a 2-day period. Man, your head is spinning. Because I'm there writing everything down. And even if it's somebody that's, they're running the wishbone and we're not even running the wishbone, I'm writing things down about that. Or they're throwing the heck out of the football every down, kind of like Dawson used to do. And we don't do that, but I'd still be writing that down because I might take 2 or 3 of their pass plays and implement them into my offense, But I was just trying to soak up as much knowledge as possible from a lot of different people. And learn the game. And then, the guys, as you get older, you don't go over as many X's and O's when you become a head coach. Then you start listening to people about organization and about discipline and, what they do in their program, not the X's and O part of it. And because that's more about what what Mike has to deal with. He's not an X's and O as much as he used to be, and so you're trying to get those people organized and you're learning that and learning the ways people approach their staff and how they organize their staff and what they think is important. And you'll listen to guys and you're thinking, man, that's not important to me, but, when you're listening to somebody talk, so again, like Mike said, you're not going to agree with everybody on what they do, but I was just trying to get better every single day. I'm just trying to learn something every day, just like I still am, really. But soaking up as much knowledge as possible, and especially with the internet now, man. I mean, there's no excuse for kids on top of coaches to not. They have access to everything that they need as far as knowledge of their position and studying their position. And, we always talk to our kids about being students of the game. And, man, being a student of the game, and you don't have that many kids I never did have that many that were students of the game. You have to think about football when you're not playing football. You have to think about football other times to really be a student of the game. So we were really harping on that all the time. But as a coach, man, you have to just, keep soaking up knowledge as much as you possibly can and learn new things.
Hey, Coach, I appreciate that. And that's kind of what I kind of want to wrap this up with. That was kind of some parting words that I appreciate. And I want to let the guys in the audience, you guys attendees, we're going to finish up here to finish up the webinar, if you will. And so I'd like for Coach, the double mics, I guess. We call them the bookends. The Mike and Mike show. What would be your parting words of wisdom for these guys? I've asked that question in each one of these interviews, and I think that's been a big plus. Just hearing from you guys in what would you tell them? And guys, I'll turn it to Mike Allison first, but as they finish up, if you have a question, please don't hesitate to ask. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I mean, it kind of piggybacks off of a lot of the things that coaches have said throughout this meeting here. Just continue to learn. Like I said early on, that if I'm the smartest guy in the room, then I need to find a different room to hang out in. I want to get the opinions of the people that I'm working with, the coaching staff. I want to get the opinions and the feedback from the players that we're coaching. And I think that helps to give everyone ownership within the program that you are trying to build. And I believe that if everyone feels like they have ownership in it, then they're going to work a little bit harder for it. If everyone has a voice, everyone feels like they have value in the direction that the program is going. And that includes practices. That includes, off-season workouts. It includes games. It includes just when you're hanging out, trying to develop leaders and develop young men. If everyone has their input and they feel like they're heard, then I believe that they're going to work harder towards that same goal that we all have. I think my job as a coach is to help develop young men, and football is the tool that we use. And, people say, well, was this season a success and stuff like that? And I always fall back to, I don't really know. For about 5 or 10 years, then I'll be able to tell you. When these players are out in the workforce, when these players are husbands and fathers and either employees or bosses, if they have at that point become successful in whatever it is they're doing, and what we tried to teach them when they were here through the game of football, if that had a part of teaching them the lessons that they need to be successful, well, that's when I know that what we're doing means something. And that's when I know that the season was a success. But heck, just keep working together. I know that y'all's situation is a lot different than what we have to deal with. Everybody in their own thing has problems. Here we're dealing with, well, like everywhere, I guess, we're dealing with COVID and the restrictions and having to change things. We're dealing with, racial tension or authority tension with police officers and different communities within the community. And those are issues that we're working ourselves through right now. And I know that things are different for y'all just on the field, like y'all were talking about with players and coaches and egos and stuff like that. And you have to deal with it in different ways. Just continue to work, continue to look for guidance from people that have done it, continue to work with your staffs and with your players, because at the end of the day, you should all have the same goal. And as long as everyone feels like they're heard and feels like they have that input, I think that it's going to end up a little bit better for you.
And I want to piggyback off of that and say, and again, something that Coach Tony said a little bit earlier, take small steps, have small successes along the way, and understand that everybody has different opinions. Everybody has different ideas, but at the end of the day, you all have the same goal. You all have the same dream. You all have the same vision. And so it's okay to disagree with each other, but just be encouraged. Don't be discouraged, and have small successes along the way, and celebrate those when you see one. And don't be afraid to admit when you've made a mistake or you've done something wrong. Those are things that will help you not only as a coach, but as a man. It's okay to make mistakes, and you own up to them and you learn from them and you move on. But my biggest thing, and knowing a lot of you guys personally, is just, don't be discouraged, and celebrate those small successes, and just keep chipping away. Just like Coach Heath said, just keep chipping away that big boulder, and then someday you'll get it to be exactly what you want it to be.
Marco, I know you wanted to make a comment. Go ahead.
Yes, I know we're coming to an end, and I don't want to keep you guys for any longer. I'm very grateful for all the things that you said, and I think that this webinar has given us a little bit of an insight to what to do and the problems that we had. I just wanted to piggyback on what Coach Allison said. I think that the solution to developing American football in a country, whether it's the Balkans or wherever, is having to develop players from a young age and getting them to know the game of football from as young as possible. The problem that we have is we're now coming to the business part of football in Croatia. Is we don't have the resources, we don't have the people, we don't have the financial support of local communities or alliances that we have in football to be able to have enough people and enough time to have PV football or junior football or whatever the name for kids is in football. I think that if we are able to do something like that, if every team in the region was able to have kids from, let's say, 10 or 11 ages and up, learning football and then living football when he gets to the A team, let's say when he's 18, that he has 10 years of experience in the game of football, that would be the ideal solution, and that would be the main let's say the biggest step in development of something in Croatia. Because when you try to find new members, when you need new players, you need offensive linemen or defensive linemen or somebody who's going to play linebacker who has 120 kilos and can run like Flash, and you cannot find that in somebody who's not 25 or older, or somebody who's, you need offensive linemen, and it's not easy to find a kid who's, I don't know, 17 and can be an offensive lineman and move like an offensive lineman. So usually when you start an audition for new members or new players, you get people who are 20, 25, 30, people who are already set in their ways, who have kids or families, or it's very hard to shape them in a way to be football players and to be a part of your team and the way that you want to do things. And especially then it comes back to the part that you have 4 roles in the same team, and then you're trying to tell to a guy who's possibly older than you what to do and how to do things in life. And when you have kids that you can teach them to later on be people or employees or stuff like that, I just think that's the thing that we need to be working on. And I know that you guys did so much so far, and I believe that if we are able to do that, we'll have football in Balkans and the rest of the Europe.
Marco made a suggestion before he came on. These guys need to come and get to know them like Mike and I and Zach and Brandon have. So that's an open invitation to you guys.
Yeah. And I promise you this: once you go, you'll want to go back every time.
That's why I'm not going right now. Then I'll have to go there. I could probably go where to live and teach football. That'd be
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, let me just ask a question about, we was talking about youth football, Pee Wee football and all. I mean, is there no way to get here's the thing that to me people miss the point of playing football. The point of playing football is not to win football games. I mean, we love to say that, and we love winning, and Coach Allison, I'm sure he'll get fired if he doesn't win enough games over there like most people, but, that's not why we teach kids football, and it took me about 10 years. Once I got out of college and started coaching, it was all about winning, and I love the game and all that. But it took me about 10 years of coaching before I figured out that I really wasn't teaching football. And so I think, in wherever you're coaching, whether it's in Bosnia, Croatia, or wherever, working on people to sponsor the game, sponsor youth leagues, Pee Wee football, whatever you want to call it. Once they realize what you're trying to teach kids, you're not teaching them football. Football is just a byproduct of what you're really trying to teach them. We're trying to have character building. We're trying to teach leadership. We're making them better people because they're a football player. That's why they're a football player. They're not a football player because they're going to go to the NFL and, don't get me started on NFL. I mean, NFL is not real football. That's just my opinion. But anyway, don't get me started on that. And most kids
don't get started on it, Coach.
And most kids are not, kids are not going to go to the NFL. Most kids are not going. They're not going to college and play football. Most of them are not. And so we're teaching them football because it's making them better people. And so if you talk to sponsors maybe I don't know how the business, is over there, anything about the country, but, people that are concerned about teaching kids the right thing to do and to develop them to get to be good people, maybe they will sponsor teams, or you'll get 2 or 3 sponsors that will sponsor, youth football teams and buy equipment from them or whatever is needed over there. I don't know. That's just an idea.
When I
That's
think,
that's something I was thinking
yeah.
about, Coach. I'm glad you said that. Was the in hearing some of the questions and some of the comments, we're talking about. It's almost like they're starting at 17 years old, or older.
Yeah.
25 years old or older. Is it? And we talk about the peewees, and I think it's a great idea to reach out to businesses if they're able to do it, if that's how they work, and make and present to them, hey, we're going to get these kids together, and we're going to teach them character. We're going to teach them leadership. We're going to teach them responsibility and accountability, and how to be men and how to be productive men, and teach them how to work with others. And we're going to do it through this football league that we're going to try to put together for, kids that are from 10 years old to 14 years old. And it's just going to be this group of kids that are going to play. I don't know what interest you would have, or if there would be enough 10 to 14-year-old kids that would come out and do it. And it may just be a flag football league. It may start with that. But to just, and then that would then in turn help with the knowledge of the game, which, give it a few years. And then when those kids are playing tackle football, and when they're 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, then you may not have as much of an obstacle teaching the game. And again, I'm not sure how the system works with all of that, but I think that's a great idea to present that to businesses, to try to find sponsorship or some help in trying to develop the younger kids in their knowledge of the game, but more so than that, what they can learn from the game.
Yeah. You bring up a great point, Chris, both you and Coach Allison and Coach Quillian. It's wins and losses are not even though it's a goal, right? We're all competitive and we all play a game because we like that, but it's building character and it's creating leadership. It's creating the teamwork. It's creating that understanding of working together and building character. And so thanks so much for making that comment. I wanted to invite Brandon on and Zach on before we closed here, just to tell them thank you for looking on my back and helping flag those questions and all of that. Mike, you got any parting words that you would have to say?
You talking this Mike?
Mike, Coach Norman, excuse me, I forgot about the bookends.
No, I mean, I know, again, Marco and all you other guys that are listening, I've been there. I may not live there, but I have been there, and I know what you go through. And trust me, I'm always thinking of ways to try to help you guys, because that's where my heart is too. My heart is with you guys, and I want to try to think of ways to help you. But just know that we're praying for you, and we're pulling for you, and we're always thinking about ways to help you guys get better. And if I've come up with a great answer, I promise you, I'm gonna share it with you, and we'll just kind of see where the Lord leads all of us.
Amen. Amen. Guys, Brandon joined us as well. He's been on the whole time, and if it wasn't for him, we probably wouldn't be doing football today. He answered the call many years ago in reaching out to me and reaching out to his print, and as a result of that, we've gotten where we've gotten. And with supplying equipment, with coming over, and then supplying things like this, and we want to continue to do that and help in any other way that we can. So I want to pray us out, as we always do in camps. We pray out, we pray in, we pray out. And then from there, I would, Coach Allison and Coach Quillian, thank you so much for taking the time. If you want to stay and talk, we're going to open it up, and we'll probably have some conversations here that you may want to be a part of. But I know you've already, Mike, Coach Allison, you got to go paint some more. And
Oh, dang it. You
I
still
don't want to take away from that.
They make you paint over Pearland still, huh?
No, I was painting it at my house.
At your house.
home.
Okay, well,
Yeah, I was painting at my house. That's why I told David I thanked him for having me over here today, because I had to tell my wife, I'm like, hey, I got to go do this thing. I got to be.
It's raining over here anyway. You can't be painting today. So.
Indoors. It's a room. So anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you
So it may, you know what? I may be here long enough for it to be done by the time I get home.
I'll make it a long prayer. Hey guys, I'm going to close this in prayer. Just thanking for this opportunity. God, we thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for these coaches, for their willingness to take the time out of their busy lives and busy schedules, for just pouring out their hearts as they've done in the relationship series and as they did here today, just to share some knowledge that they have from the many years of experience that they've had. Thank you for the attendees that were here and the questions that were asked and the opportunities that we had just to get to know one another, get to know a little bit about what's going on over there, so that we're more knowledgeable over here, as well as helping provide knowledge for you as coaches and players over there. Lord, we just use our step to leave your print wherever we go, with whomever we meet, and just thank you for these guys and their participation. Give you the praise. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Enjoyed it.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Coach Quillian.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks, Coach Mike, unless you're staying. Let's see here, Zach. Let's